Hello. I'm not going to say good day because today it's October 19th, 2018. I just decided I'm going to make another video. I thought this was all done and over with. Still don't have it. I still got my unincorporated presidential hat on, so I'm going to try to boil it all down to the simplest terms, because I was on the internet for quite a while yesterday discussing some issues from that earlier video I did yesterday morning. And people are still doing up to their old accusations, and I don't know if people are getting it or gotten it or just hanging on to their old angles of attack and mudslinging. So I'm going to try to really boil it down. You've got a private government body that's claiming to be public. And this is not just in this country, but it's kind of over the whole world. So when I'm making this video in the hopes that it'll prevent a civil war in this country and a World War III, it boils down to, like I said, the two entities. One party that's claiming to be government, saying this is the way it is, and there's a few people out there saying this is not the way it is. So we have to try to reveal who these parties are, including myself. You've got the question of citizenship. Now, if the one world people, the globalists, communists, were correct, that we are all one and we should be treated all the one, why is it that there's always that elite that are running the Communist Party or running the government or above the government or above the law? They are above that, so they're another party. So we're not all equal. And yet these same people are propagandizing and putting all this stuff that we're all equal and that we should all be under the one entity. That's it in a nutshell. The political Patriot movement that was underway in this country from the 60s through to what I say the end of the 90s, had given up, including myself, after Waco and Ruby Ridge and a lot of other outright assassinations and killings. And I was lucky, as I've said in some videos, to have won a case in 1998. But as I've said in other videos, all that has been erased, expunged out of the records, and just all it says now is that the case was dismissed. But this was all under whether you gave up your power of attorney, your rights, and became a citizen or a resident of that governmental body, which is claiming to be government of everybody, except themselves, except the elite. Now, I've been saying right along that if we would have recognized that there's two different entities, two different parties, if we would officially recognize that, then we could proceed with that. and there wouldn't be any need to be warring. We could get down to it. But that's not the case, it seems. A judge up in, Justice of the Peace up in Alaska is being continually said, well, she's not a judge, or she's in with the Pope, or something ridiculous like that. And that's sidetracking. That's like saying somebody running for political office or running for judgeship who attended parties that sex was being widely utilized between all parties, and alcohol, and that an accusation of sex or alcohol abuse or something would be a right to say that person's no good. I did it when I was younger, went to parties, chased women. I'm not disputing that. So here I'm getting off this. If something simple just to be an accusation can throw something out, that's what they've done by saying this woman is not a judge, or she's in with the Pope. That's got nothing to do with it. It's the same with charging a guy that's running for a judgeship with having a sex act. That's sidetracking it. The issue is what these people are saying and whether it's provable or not. So the question is not, is this person a judge, which she never claimed to be a full judge under the American Bar Association. I lost my train of thought again. That's not the question. It's what that person is acting, what they're saying. Just like I'm acting as the president of an unincorporated United States of America. It's what the action is, what action you are taking part and what you are saying. And I'm saying that there's two different entities involved here. And I've told you the way it is about all this paperwork being one entity. That's a private, it's a paper contract. It's two-dimensional. So you don't even have to believe or accept that we're a fourth dimensional or a fifth dimensional being, even though a lot of us have lost our abilities to communicate and connect with the fifth dimension totally. And some of us have lost the fourth dimension, which is in a sense your soul. It's your connection, your connection between the third and the fourth. But all this paperwork is two-dimensional. It's a private contract. So let me go back, way back. It's the same issue that happened in the Garden of Eden. There was a God or a creator that told Adam and Eve certain things. This is the dimension. So somebody came along, a third party, because God, the creator, and Adam and Eve, those were two separate parties. Well, third party entered, the snake or Lucifer or whatever, and said, I've got this contract, I've got something that if you do it, you will become bigger. You will gain something bigger than what this God creator has told you. Now, I'm not saying the right or the wrong there. I'm trying to tell you what's going on. And so Eve supposedly ate this apple. And So Adam, because it was a party, a one party, a marriage, or whatever you want to call it, an agreement between those two, he went ahead and ate the apple too. So all sorts of things, they gained knowledge and everything, and then they had to end up dying. They had to go through the whole process, the whole cycle, that whole sine curve, because they had overstepped their bounds. Well, that's what you have with this entity, this governmental body that's saying, I'm governing you if you will let me represent you. And so most people have gone out there and signed on this paper for representing this Luciferian or this government that was a separate entity from your being, as a larger party, because this Lucifer, this Satan, this third party is going to offer you much more than what the Creator God had offered. Now, do you see the parallel there? Because we're just repeating history again. We're repeating it. So, getting back to where I started, 9/11 came along, and a lot happened there in New York City and in Pentagon, and it's all argued to this day, except officially. And we know the official story, which is the most ridiculous. But anyway, they passed the Patriot Act, but I call it the Unpatriot Act because it took all the rights away from the patriot, the supposed patriot, and said, this is the patriot, like this is the new patriot, this is the new world order. And we are here to protect you. We are the government, and we're protecting you by this act that we've passed through, and the world has changed. But it hasn't changed. It's the same old story. It's the same old debt. 9/11, taking down the Twin Towers, was an insurance scam, just like the sinking of the Titanic. Same old story again, except bigger. The Titanic was basically revolved around the Federal Reserve Act that was going to be passed, and an insurance claim against a ship that was actually no good. And it wasn't the Titanic. It was a sister ship. So the owners swapped the two and sent this damaged ship out as the Titanic and sunk it and got the big insurance claim. Doesn't that sound like 9/11? But what was happening is, besides this insurance scam, there was investigations going on both in that wing of the Pentagon and in the Twin Towers of where this trillions of dollars had disappeared. Trillions! But that was all covered up because we had to go fight those box cutters over in some country around the world, other half of the world. Those box cutting guys did it. So everybody rushed out there and did it. The Patriot Act passed. But it's the same old excuse, the same old sham going on, and it's to extend the debt over the people. It's extend that private government contract that most of you have signed that's in debt, and it's holding you accountable for that debt because you asked for the representation. Even though in most cases you were threatened with imprisonment or a large fine, way bigger than anything you'd ever experienced before, if you didn't sign this. So in a sense, that's under threat, duress, or coercion. But most people, they wanted to sign that because this government, this Luciferian satanic force, had offered them a better deal with benefits and entitlements that they hadn't had before. And it's quite provable that this so-called body is a private entity, and that's what I say is in the City of London, and we're all being incorporated under that. Of course, there's the argument that the Pope has the power over the City of London, and I'm not going to question that. I'm just saying that I'm aware of that. But you get the picture. So it's all getting back to these two entities, you and the so-called government. Now, God, our Creator, gave us rights to be our own governing body, and that's what I'm talking about in my book, The Legit President. That would be you if you didn't give up your power of attorney, didn't give up your power that your Creator had given you, God, but you had passed on to the second entity, government. And this government had told you that this is a public government. And that's still a big question, a big argument today. But it's quite, there's enough proof out there that it's a private body. You can look up in the phone book, the Federal Reserve and a lot of these entities are listed in the white pages, not the yellow pages. Of course, it's hard to find a phone book anymore, so just like it's hard to find any information really on the internet anymore about this whole issue that I'm talking about right now, about two entities, about the government being a private body and a private contractor, and therefore there's two at play. Anyway, to boil down and get back to what I was saying at the very beginning of this video, is the proof has come out, and I've stated it in my other videos, about when the Real ID Act was enforced, came about and was enforced. And so it's the government that is saying it, not what I was trying to say in the 1990s. It's the government that is saying that unless you can show me a mailed bill from a utility company from the grid, and I'm talking about the greater grid, you are not a resident. In a sense, you're not a citizen of this political body, the state of such and such, or county of. So it's not me anymore that's saying this. It's the government that's saying it. Yet the proof boils down to that large capital name of your letters of your name on this bill with an address on it, not your address, but the address we create through the zip code system, and we assign you when you live or occupy a residential address. So I've never had a utility bill in my entire life under my name. So I'm not one of their residents. I'm not one of their citizens. But that doesn't mean I give up my God-given rights for this land because I was born on this continent. Now, I will admit I was born in Washington, D.C., which brings up some issues. But I have a right to move, to travel out of that District of Columbus. And I haven't been in the District of Columbus since 2006. Yeah, that was the last time I was there. And that was only for a few days to try to get my birth certificate because I wasn't able to get it through the mail anymore. And that's a whole bigger issue, so I had to physically go down there. And I got it when I physically went down there. So anyway, what I'm saying is this governmental body is saying that the proof of residence, the proof of citizenship of their private corporation is your name in large caps with a utility bill. I mean, that's part of the real proof of the Real ID Act. Yeah, you can say, well, it's a birth certificate, Social Security card or something, but the Real ID Act also includes that address, and that's a whole nother book. What is an address? They say it's a postal address, but it's also your name. They're addressing you, and that gets back to, how do I identify myself? Do I identify myself with the capital letters? Do I identify myself with a name that my parents gave me with a large first letter and then small letters afterwards? Or am I just me, this man who's sitting here talking to you? And that's how you identify yourself in court. And the judge wants you to identify yourself with this picture ID. And you can read or listen to my video from yesterday on the 18th if you want to know more on that. But there it is in a nutshell. And we've got to have a choice. We've got to have a choice. And Republicans and Democrats is no choice because it's the same, it's controlled by the same party. So what I'm saying is, you've got those who want to take care of themselves and are responsible for themselves. And on the other hand, you've got those who want Big Brother to take care of them, or you to take care of them. Another thing that I got brought up yesterday was the voting in this country, and somehow it got up to the women's vote too, or the blacks, slaves voting, and I said the 14th Amendment citizenship, which of course all the arguments are not on the internet anymore. I just looked today. They've been taken off because it's not politically correct according to Google's view of what reality is. The internet used to have a lot of these arguments that I'm doing right now because they were quite popular. And in the old days, the search engine ran on popularity, what kind of like what's selling or what's popular. But now it's the world according to Google. A private individual, private corporation, private company, and I'm not arguing that they don't have a right to say what can and cannot be on their website. In fact, I'm saying they can. So, you got that? So anyway, back to voting. I was saying that women in many states did have the right to vote. They were able to vote, but not as women. They were voting as property owners. And at that time, only property owners could vote. And that should be sensible enough to yourself. Maybe I'll go over a little bit. It was because they had a stake in the ground. This was all about that land. So an outside party didn't have a vote in that matter. But later, over the decades and to now, every anybody, including illegal aliens, can get the right to vote by having an address, having somebody paid a utility bill, and they can go vote or something. You get what I'm saying? So, but back in the day, it was only the property owners. And if a woman owned a property, and now in some states it had to be a piece of property over a certain value or something like that, but that's all small potatoes. So they were a woman, but today we're saying, or a lot of people are saying, they never had a right to vote. Well, that's true because they were voting as a property owner. That's a big difference. Okay, something I didn't realize this morning when I was looking all that up, just to make sure I was right, was at one time there was a difference between taxpayers and non-taxpayers. And the taxpayer was the one that had the right to vote. Now, isn't that something? That is really saying something, and I had, if I ever knew that, I had lost it. Now, I knew in cities there was taxpayers and there was no taxpayers, and that was back when towns and villages, even in this country, you can see that somebody that lived in that town had to work for just like 2 or 3 days or maybe 4 days as a city service to be a member, a resident of that city. But it only took a couple days, and now what is it? Our taxes for the average person is way past April. And then if you figure in all the other taxes, it's probably more like July or so that you're paying 50% of what you make for taxes. But that's another story. The issue when I'm saying at one time there was a difference between a taxpayer and a non-taxpayer. And that's what I've been trying to say for the last 45 years. And the proof of it today is if you become incorporated, you pay less taxes than if you're not incorporated. Or if you pay a high-priced lawyer, you can get out of paying any taxes, like certain large corporations in this country, which I won't mention right now. They don't pay any taxes because they've got all these write-offs. So they're above the law. And it's rightfully so because it's all private. They've got this private lawyer that's got his license through the American Bar Association, which is part of the British Bar Association, which is under the City of London. You get the picture? So it's a two-party system in reality. The elite, the ones who can afford to pay off the lawyers, and those that don't. So I'm saying, why not officially recognize taxpayers or non-taxpayers? And we did in this country at one time. It's all in the records. It's in your history. Don't listen to somebody that's saying, oh, don't listen to her because she's not a judge, when in fact, she's never said I was a licensed judge, a licensed attorney. And there's proof that she has notified, put the Pope on notice that he's breaking what his oath is supposed to be. And the same with the Queen, the current Queen of England. The Queen and the Catholic Church are both practicing formalities of the worship of Baal. And this is the archway that's being passed around and being worshipped in different cities, Washington, D.C., New York, London, Paris, all over the world. We're officially, the government or the news media, or whoever's moving this thing, this representation of the archway around, is proving that you all are worshiping Baal. The super salesman who got Adam and Eve to eat that apple, or the representation of that, won. And I'm not saying what this was right or wrong, or that God didn't have. I'm just trying to say that's what happened. This is what happened recently. 9/11 happened. Same old arguments are going on that you are responsible for the debt. And they want to just keep kicking the can down the road. And I'm saying that myself, I'm not responsible for that multi-trillion-dollar debt that the central bankers have shafted, scammed onto the people, and are saying that the people are responsible. And whenever they do this, they get a bonus at the end of the year, a big bonus. Sometimes it's bigger than their entire salary for that year as a CEO. They get a bonus for doing such a great job of giving those people the shaft. It's a big scam. It's an old scam. It's the same old scam. And if they would recognize, if we would all recognize ourselves as being capable of going in two different directions, we wouldn't need to have a civil war. We wouldn't need to have a world war. We could sit down like gentlemen and talk this over, rather than going out and doing Hitler speeches under the name of Antifa, which is supposed to be anti-Hitler, and yet all that they're talking about is socialist, communist stuff. They're just people that are easily led to believe certain things, and in many cases they're getting paid, sometimes right before the spot, cash, to go out there and demonstrate. This is quite obvious if you look. And I want to say my sorrows to some former friends who I thought were friends that in the last year, or a little more than that, but pretty much just in the last year, things have gotten so bad. They were Clinton supporters, and we all went into this last year, but we can't talk to each other anymore. So in a sense, we're no longer friends because of this issue. And I feel like it's beyond proof now of what the Clintons did and some of the elite. And these people, my former friends and other people, don't want to admit. And they'd rather have a war or a revolution over it than to admit. And I try to admit when I'm wrong. I've been wrong. And that's, in a sense, what I did in the end of the 90s. Even though I won that case, I gave up. I was able to get a driver's license under threat, duress, or coercion. I worked my butt off, probably more than I had, for myself. And I finally had some money, and then the IRS took it all away from me and said that all these taxes are yours. And then I've gone into that in other videos. But anyway, and I was still willing to keep it all shut until I wasn't able to get a driver's license anymore because of the Real ID Act. And I said, well, that's what I was trying to tell you people all along. And now you're telling me, okay, well, I'm going to use what you're saying as the proof and take it from there. So it's not me saying this. It's not only me that's saying there's two entities. The government is out there saying it. They're saying you are not in the grid. And the grid has been set up by corporations to help out everybody. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's there. But people like myself are proof that we are living off the grid. And tonight, I'm still going to be here. I'm going to turn electricity off. But it's not my electricity. I'm just being allowed to use this room right now. Somebody else is paying the bill. But because I'm responsible, I only turn that light on if I really need it. I don't go turning all the lights on all around here and running up things saying, I don't have to pay for this, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. I'm being responsible. And I would be happy to pay an electric bill if that's all it was. I'd be happy to get a driver's license if that's all it was. But this electric bill, this driver license is much more. It's identifying you in with the beast system, the grid system, or whatever you want to say. It's the mark of the beast. All these numbers, even the name. That's why I'm saying I am the man who sits before you. I am the president of the incorporated body. I am my own being. But I'm happy to see out there an Uncle Sam. And I would be glad to help out that Uncle Sam, help take care of these people that are not able to take care of themselves. And I've written books and said things like that. But it still gets back to the same old thing that you're nuts, you don't have a license, you're not a graduate of some university, you don't have a lot of bucks, so you don't count. My beard doesn't count. My wrinkles don't count. My age doesn't count. Hope I got that. That's 38 minutes, which is one more minute than what I did on the video yesterday. That's it in a nutshell. We are not equal. We are equal under the Creator's laws. We are all responsible for ourselves. And we have to pay it, whether it's through death, after we die, or before we die. We need to get our ducks in a row. We can't kick the can down the road any further. We've got to admit our faults so that we can start a new day where the debts have been figured out, and the new day is we no longer owe thousands, millions, trillions of dollars to an incorporated body that doesn't even have a soul. Good day.